From WBAY TV, your first alert station, Action 2 News at 4:30 starts now.
Right now on Action 2 News at 4:30, the state assembly delays voting on repealing the statewide mask mandate, but leaders say that vote will still take place at some point. Why the delay, and what are local businesses saying about a possible repeal? Plus, several counties in our area taking part in the national point-in-time count that records how many homeless people in our area have shelter. We'll break down the results with our reporter who was along for the count last night. And organizers of EAA AirVenture are planning to hold an in-person event this year after canceling due to COVID in 2020. You'll hear why they're doing this, even with plenty of uncertainty still remaining, of course, with the pandemic. Good afternoon. Welcome into Action 2 News at 4:30. Two news reporters, Dakota Sherrick and Joshua Peguero. Now, the state assembly was initially set to vote on repealing the statewide mask mandate this morning. But after hours of discussion, Assembly Speaker Robin Vos announced the chamber would be delaying the vote on the mask order due to financial concerns. Lawmakers are worried the state could lose nearly $50 million in federal food assistance funding if the public health emergency is overturned. Instead, the state Senate convened today to pass an amended coronavirus relief bill to help ensure the state can still receive that federal funding. Now, Assembly Speaker Vos indicated the Assembly is still going to, at some point, vote on the repealing the mask mandate. Joshua Peguero spent time today speaking with some local businesses about this ongoing debate. He joins us now in the newsroom. So, Joshua, let's look at these small businesses. What was their reaction to the news today?
So there's a lot of uncertainty going on among businesses because they just don't know what direction is coming from the top. A lot of these businesses have developed their own sort of mask rules, which is either requiring customers to wear one, and that means if they don't, they'll kick them out. And then other businesses are saying, you know what, if they want to come in with a mask, great. If they don't, that's fine as well. Again, it's just there's no certainty. There's no clear guidance coming from the top on what they should do.
So without that guidance, Joshua, you talked to three businesses today. Do you get a sense of how difficult or maybe frustrating it is for them not to have just one universal rule for everybody and then they're left to their own devices?
So one thing that they said is that they enjoy or they like having a mask mandate because it gives people an incentive to wear one. There's no need for them, and it also adds teeth to it, as opposed to them, you know, as a business owner saying, hey, you have to wear one to come in, and then someone acting up or having some sort of confrontation. There's like a set guidance that comes from the state, and it just helps, and it's something, one less thing to worry about. They can worry about how to generate more business, given that we're in a pandemic. They can worry about applying for different loans, and they can also worry about bringing in clients.
Yeah, well, the science and the medicine all tells us that the masks help. We know the vaccines are now being distributed and people are being vaccinated. So, you know, if that gets us to the end line, I mean, these businesses have to be desperate now, right, for this thing to come to a close. So to do anything to keep it going quickly is probably what they want, right? I mean, did you get that sense from them as well?
Yes, I did. I spoke to three businesses. Let me just be clear. Zambaldi Beer, they're all in Brown County. Zambaldi Beer, Nectar, as well as Jake's Pizza. And one of the things that they said is that they really need some sort of end goal when this pandemic is going to finish. They need to be able to plan for the future. And a lot of them are just concerned. They've had to lay off pretty much all of their staff, and there's no money coming in. There's not as much money coming in as there was the previous years. And some of these businesses have lost more than half of the total revenue that they made in previous years. So it's so much uncertainty, and you know, as the saying goes, the backbone of America are small businesses.
All right, Joshua, thanks very much. And he'll have his story, and we'll hear from those small businesses coming up on Action 2 News at 5. Well, searches took place across several counties in northeast Wisconsin overnight, recording how sheltered and unsheltered people are experiencing homelessness. Now, our Dakota Sherrick went along on that count last night in the Appleton area. So, Dakota, who were you with and what did you see?
Yeah, so I actually was teamed up with Appleton's mayor and Pillar's executive director going through with them, and this whole thing is actually organized by the Fox Cities Housing Coalition, which is a number of different community organizations, and basically we were just going around to different, parking lots, going under overpasses, just trying to look for different signs of homelessness and potentially people that could be helped.
So this is the first time, you and I talked earlier this afternoon, it's the first time you've been along on these counts. These counts have been done before in the past, but for you it was the first time, and we're seeing this video now where they're searching for people. What impressions did this make upon you?
Yeah, you know, not having done this before, it was really interesting to go. I mean, it was so cold last night, and it just really makes you think of just what these people are going through, these people who don't have shelter and are just out in the elements. And, you know, one thing that interested me, there was the obvious, you know, what would come to mind with homelessness. Under the overpass, we'd find sleeping bags and things like that, and signs that there are people finding shelter there. But also there was a lot of signs of just cars in parking lots, people just using cars as shelter, which I didn't really think of that much before doing this. So I didn't really realize, you know, those cars kind of off in the back of the lot, that could be somebody who's struggling to find shelter.
Yeah, we saw the video of the flashlights and searching in the cars there. So how do these counts and the numbers they glean from last night, how do those impact their programs going forward?
Yeah, so Point in Time is an overall national count that happens. So this data is used in the federal level and down to the state and local levels. And really, they're just using these numbers to really try to figure out, you know, where help is needed most, where the resources really need to go, because people can experience homelessness in all sorts of different ways. So they're really just trying to figure out kind of where to really put their effort into to try to fix this problem.
Do they have a sense how accurate the count is given the pandemic?
Yeah, so the pandemic, obviously you have this moratorium on evictions, so there is some concern that perhaps they would have been seeing more people if that was not in place. Time will tell with that, really, but even the final count from last night, they found 9 unsheltered people compared to 21 people the year before, but that's only the preliminary number. And in fact, that number is already growing because they go back to some of the areas where maybe we couldn't find people but found signs of people finding shelter. So they double back and really make sure to get as accurate of a count as possible. So that number will be higher, and they'll have the final number on Monday.
All right, Dakota, thanks very much. And that story also coming up on Action 2 News at 5. Well, coming up next, your headlines of the day here on Action 2 News at 4:30. And planning for EAA AirVenture 2021 in Oshkosh is underway. We're going to have the latest details on the world's greatest and probably largest aviation celebration. And later, where is this? How did that happen? Well, this is something you need to see, and you will, coming up.
You're watching Action 2 News at 4:30 with Chris Roth, your first alert station.
Welcome back. Turning now to your headlines of the day. The first known cases of the South African COVID-19 variant have been detected in the U.S. South Carolina health officials say the 2 patients do not have travel history and there's no connection between them. Health officials believe the existing vaccines will work to protect people from this variant, and at this time there is no indication the variant causes any more severe illness. Students in the Oshkosh Area School District will return to in-person learning 5 days a week starting next month. Pre-kindergarten through 8th grade return on February 18th, followed by grades 9 through 12, returning the following week on February 25th. Students enrolled in E-Academy will remain online. Now, more information on this plan can be found at WBAY.com. President Joe Biden is ordering government health insurance markets to reopen for a special enrollment period to offer health insurance to those without it. The order directs healthcare.gov to accept new applications for subsidized benefits. The special enrollment period will run February 15th through May 15th. EAA is planning to host AirVenture later this summer in Oshkosh after having to go virtual last year. But plenty of questions remain regarding the pandemic, so we're going to ask them in a conversation with the EAA. That's coming up next. And Brad has 3 brilliant minutes to tell us all about the correlation between a full moon and our sleep patterns. And FYI, there's a full moon tonight, so stick around. Welcome back, everybody. Let's take a look now at what's coming up at the top of the hour on Action 2 News at 5. Cami Rapson joining us live in the newsroom with a preview. Hi, Cami.
Hi, Chris. We're getting a lot of updates today about vaccination clinics around the area. Ascension St. Elizabeth in Appleton holding its first clinic today for people over 65, giving doses to more than 200 people. Bellin Health says it's now taken appointments for new clinics opening in Oconto and in Marinette. And in just the past hour, we got our first look at the clinic going up at the Fox Cities Exhibition Center. We'll have a live report from Appleton at the top of the hour. Chris.
All right, thank you. We'll see you in just a couple of minutes. Well, after having to take to the internet instead of the skies last year, EAA is gearing up for EAA AirVenture in 2021. It's coming this summer, already announcing some of the groups that will appear, like the Air Force Special Operations Command. That is an impressive collection of aircraft and personnel. AirVenture billed as the world's greatest aviation celebration, and of course it happens right here in our backyard on the south side of Oshkosh. It is a massive undertaking, typically with thousands of visitors. And to talk about all of the planning going into this year in 2021, we are pleased to be joined by EAA Communications Director Dick Knapinski. So Dick, as you are starting to announce the lineup, how are you confident enough to be able to do that, given that we have a lot of uncertainty still with the summer and the pandemic?
There is a lot of uncertainty, but fortunately a year of getting ready for this has given us a very good opportunity to look at how other large events are doing it throughout the country, what it might look like by July. The vaccines are rolling out now, and that's great to see. So we're very confident that we're going to have an event from July 26th through August 1st. Exactly what that event will look like, well, nobody knows because everybody's crystal ball is a little bit foggy yet, but we're going to forge ahead. People are very eager. Our members and aviators from around the world just said, we missed Oshkosh. We missed coming to Oshkosh. And so we want to be there for EAA come 2021.
Well, the flying convention began all the way back in 1953, so skipping it was certainly painful for the group and for aviation enthusiasts. You did mention that you have talked to other groups that have that are holding, large events. How many different parameters are you guys investigating for size, attendance, and those things? Because I would imagine there are many that you're trying to work through at the moment.
Oh, there are a lot of them. You take a look at everything from people coming into the parking lots and the admission gates. How do you distance those? How do you set up technology where they may not have to stop or stand in line for any considerable time? What do you do with the thousands of people who come in and camp here? How do you get them in safely and effectively as well? And then you have everything from the air shows where we have tens of thousands of people along the flight line. How do you set that up if you need distancing come this summer? If it rains and everybody runs into a building, how do you try to space people out in that? So all of those things are coming to the fore, but we're talking to a lot of health officials on the local, on the state, on the federal level. Working together, we're coming up with a plan. A matter of fact, 2 or 3 different plans to say, okay, if this is where we are come mid-July, late July, this is how we're going to do it. If it's another set of circumstances, we can do it that way.
Dick, it's one thing that you're going to be bringing people in from around the country. That's what EAA does, but it also brings people in from around the world. So it's not just what's happening here in Wisconsin, it's where all these people are coming from. So who gets to make the call on whether or not you're going to allow people from certain countries, because it stands to reason that different locations are going to be in different places in terms of the pandemic and the vaccinations?
That's a great question, and something that certainly we have in our planning process. First of all, it really comes down to a lot of people like TSA, Customs, and so forth. What are the regulations from people traveling to different countries? For instance, as we sit here in late January, even people who fly their own airplanes from Canada are not allowed to come across the border. So will that change? Will that loosen up? We realize it may mean for a slightly diminished international contingent in Oshkosh this year. But again, we have to see that how it plays out. We know it's going to look different this year, but the feeling is going to be the same. We'll gather to talk about aviation, talk about airplanes, and talk about some of the great things that take to the sky, no matter what the year is.
Well, it is a massive and awesome event, certainly, so it has to be planned well in advance. How difficult was it for the organization to be forced to pull the plug last year, and what impact did that have on EAA?
Well, it's always a difficult decision. I think if you talk to anybody who had a large public event, whether it's us, whether it's the Packers, whether it's Summerfest down in Milwaukee, that is a decision that you don't want to make. This event has been going on for nearly 70 years, 50 years in Oshkosh, and we've gone through economic downturns, through wars, even through the strike of the air traffic controllers back in 1981. And so when you take a look at that, to have to do that, that decision had to be made early back in May, because we were getting to a tipping point there where you start to do a lot of investing in the grounds and make some of the big commitments financially and otherwise that you can't turn back from. So you had to make that far enough in advance. So this year we have a higher level of confidence. Most people know what we're dealing with now, unlike a year ago. And so we can start to move forward and put that planning into process. And one thing we are certain, people from around the world have told us, we want to get to Oshkosh. We want to be at EAA. We want that gathering to take place.
All right, our thanks to Dick Napinski, and hopefully we'll all be watching EAA later on this summer. Let's turn now to 3 brilliant minutes with Brad. We have the moon. And why do we have the moon?
Well, we have the moon.
We're not going to the moon today.
No, we're not going to talk why the moon is in orbit around the Earth. That's a whole.
That's not today. All
but
right.
we do have a full moon tonight, okay? And that's part of what we're going to talk about,
right.
okay? So some researchers from the University of Washington and Yale University, and also a university in Argentina, set out to find out if possibly the various phases of the moon might somehow impact our sleep, because every 29 and a half days we go from new moon, first quarter, full moon, third quarter, new moon, and it repeats, okay?
Okay, so I remember when my children were really young, you feared a full moon. Now, apparently that's not an old wives' tale, or it is an old wives' tale?
Well, I don't know why anybody would really fear it.
Because they don't sleep.
Well, children are children.
Well, yeah, and parents need their sleep.
Okay, so here's what they found. And they had one problem when they set out to do this study. They needed 3 groups of people. They needed urban people, rural people, and indigenous people with limited amounts of electricity. Because the problem, Chris, those of us with electricity, we are consumed with phones and tablets and computers and televisions, and that in and of itself disrupts our sleep. Okay, so they needed to identify that, to remove that element from the overall study to see if there was something they could find. They did find something. Of all the phases of the moon, in the 3 to 5 days leading up to a full moon, people went to bed 30 minutes later and slept 46 to 58 minutes less than they typically do.
Which is why I'm cranky today.
Well, I challenge all of you. Do you
Sure.
feel anything over the past couple of days? Any of you at home, have you noticed anything different about your sleep habits? Now, maybe it's just a coincidence, but I know for a fact for me, the last 2 mornings, I've been waking up too early. And I am tired, and I am cranky. But it's because, maybe it does have something to do with the moon. But in the research, they said that it was blatant, that there was definitely in all 3 groups, the urbans, the rurals, the people from Argentina, that everywhere,
Okay.
that it was very pronounced. And in fact, this was their closing statement on this whole study. And it says that this pattern may indicate that our natural circadian rhythms are somehow synchronized with or entrained to the phases of the lunar cycle. So something that I guess we take the moon for granted. But maybe there's something deeper going on with all of us as the moon makes
Like
its way-
so many other things in nature are so tied to lunar cycles.
Absolutely, and this harkens back to the story we had almost 2 months ago. The little spider in space could make a web with 0 gravity, but didn't know what's up and what's down until you showed it the light, and it assumed it was the sun. And it's like, oh, show me the sun. That's up. That must be down. It could surmise by that light source. So it's just nature, the sun, the moon, the whole thing. It's working on us in ways we don't understand.
All right. Well, thanks for helping us try and make some sense of it, Bradley. We'll see you in just a few minutes.
Get a good night's sleep.
Apparently, it's going to be easier tonight than it was last night. All right. Speaking of nature, sometimes it can be the world's greatest artist. Something you need to see when we come back.
First Alert Weather with severe weather specialist Brad Spakowitz. Sponsored by Tundraland. Beautiful decks, replacement windows, bath remodeling, built with American pride.
Something you need to see. Take a look at what Lake Michigan looked like earlier this week. A snowstorm hammering the southern part of the lake in Wisconsin and northern part there in Illinois. Well, now take a look at the result of that storm. Icicles formed all along the pier of Chicago's North Avenue Beach. Just absolutely beautiful, created by Mother Nature. That's our report tonight on Action 2 News at 4:30. Thanks for joining us. Action 2 News at 5 starts right now.